Hello and welcome back to ID Boxing with me, your host, Rob Tebbett. Just like to remind everybody, please, before we get started, to like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for more boxing content. It is early on a Monday morning after a busy weekend of boxing, and I am joined by none other than Andy Clark and Barry Jones. Guys, hell of a weekend of boxing. Barry, going to come to you first. Enjoy the weekend?
Wasn't bad, was it, really? If Nottingham was good, over in the States, it was even better, wasn't it? It was unbelievable. They had been spoiled for choice this weekend, let's be honest.
Very much so. Very much so. We're going to come on.
Sorry, I felt like you wanted more then.
No, I always wait for the gag when it's like the opening gambit.
The reason why I didn't gag.
I mean, there we go. That's a good start as well because he's well practiced.
Oh, my gag was I'd be the worst. Anyway, is because you never took the piss. You never said, "Oh, this is Andy Clark's Barry Sky's Andy Clark," and then Barry Jones.
It was a clean in, wasn't it?
Bobber Job Jones. You never said anything like that.
Not necessarily what you get, and I think it's the early time of day is just it's changed the dynamics of it.
I haven't woke up yet.
By the end unsettling.
Yeah. I think by the end of the session we'll be back to our usual self. Andy, enjoy the weekend?
Yeah, I really did. I watched the Nottingham card. It was terrific. The main event was brilliant, and we've had 3 really dramatic headline fights on big nights already this year, all with different promoters, which is great. And I think Saturday is a really close run thing for me between Saturday and Beterbiev Yard, which I was at, and I wasn't there on Saturday, but I listened to it on the radio with my fine colleague here, Bunsey, and Ronald McIntosh. I thought did a terrific job with it as always, and the atmosphere really came through. And that's what makes boxing a great radio sport. The atmosphere really comes through, and it sounded absolutely incredible. But the atmosphere, as I say, for all of those 3 was amazing. I would put Beterbiev Yard and Saturday above Eubank Smith, because Eubank Smith was incredibly dramatic given the conclusion and the fact that no one expected it. But I think for it to be a really, really good or great fight, it has to seesaw, and those 2 fights seesawed. I was gutted when Leigh went down and then Ben Davis has stopped it on Saturday, because I just didn't really. You're so in the moment when a fight's that good, and he goes down, then he's back up and he's on his feet, and is he going to continue? And then what? The towel? And then you think about it for a few seconds and think, oh, okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good call actually, but it just all of a sudden it was over, and I wanted more. I wanted Leigh to win. He's a British fighter, but it was terrific, really was.
Barry, going to come to you first because neither myself or Andy were there at the weekend. We will, of course. I mean, big part.
Why weren't you there? I
was actually not very well, so I went home. So I wanted to be
Your
fresh.
generation of being ill.
I wanted to be fresh for the Monday morning start with you. I knew you on a Monday morning.
But that didn't work out well, did it?
No. I'm definitely many things, but not fresh. But
dogging this morning. I mean, walking the dog. Walking the dog.
There he goes. But yeah, Barry, you were there. We will obviously come on to talk about the stoppage. I think it's probably safe to say that is the biggest story to come out from the night. But before we talk about that, what was the atmosphere like there in Nottingham?
Oh, it was amazing. Absolutely, because I've only been to Nottingham twice, and the first time I went there was when this was meant to take place, and it didn't, obviously. So the atmosphere was a little bit nowhere near what it was, and obviously Nottingham Forest drew with Man City like a couple of hours before, so just you knew it was going to be a joyful occasion, I guess. But it was brilliant. The atmosphere was amazing, and the way it steeps up in that. It literally feels like something like a Coliseum type, doesn't it?
It's a great arena.
Yeah, it really is. And Leigh Wood box just fantastic. He was amazing. I really was. I just using being a taller fighter with a longer reach is a massive advantage. But if you don't use it right, then you're just a bigger target to hit. And against a big puncher, that can spell the end of your career. So at the end of the fight. But he negated a lot of the work of the fella, Lara. I couldn't think of his name then. I had Ruiz in my head for the other guy who boxed, but Mexicans are bloody everywhere. But he just boxed. He just put a lean on the back foot. He was sort of like doing that little wand with the left hand, but everything was sharp with him, and he had to take a few good shots. And that was always, he knew that was going to be the case. You can't fight someone like Lopez and not take a shot. But, Lara and Lopez. Yeah, I was talking about Lopez earlier as well. But that's where he knocked out Warrington Bloody Mexicans everywhere. Yeah, but Lara, it was just too early in the morning for me, no. But I thought he boxed really well, really controlled, real mature display. But you just can't make a mistake with Lara. No, he didn't really make a mistake. He just threw a shot. It was close, and Lara just come in. Actually, because Lara's a rhythm puncher, he doesn't really load up. He puts everything into the shot. But he uses body mechanics. That's why sometimes he swings the back foot forward and looks crude, because he just throws his body into the shot. He doesn't really tense up. No, Leigh Wood throws a bit more conventional, but with that, he sort of got to make a bit more of an effort with his punches. So that means your tank will probably empty in comparison quicker than the other guy. You might be fitter, so it might not look that way, but it will. So all that means is when you get into those rounds where it's been a hard fight and you start to fatigue, then the snap is out of your punch a little bit, so it just makes it a little bit slower. Because they both throw left hooks in round 2 like that, and Leigh might get there first and cleaner. And I don't think he knocks out Lara, but I just mean he gets the left hook was fine. He dropped the right hand a little bit, but you get that when you're turning your body, and you got to get a bit of. But the fact that you're not being rhythmic with it, it's more like a snap. Then you got to get that little jerk to start it off. So that drops the right hand a little bit, and that's all it was. And Lara just rather than Lara do that. Swing like to keep the body upright, he sort of dipped the right shoulder over the left knee a little bit, and then uses the weight of his body, steps, engages down, comes back up, and it's all just again using your body mechanics as like smooth motion. And he's done. He was done. He was done. I don't care what anyone says. He was finished. But up until that point, he was boxing so well, and it looked like Lara was starting to fade, was starting to struggle, for me. Yeah. And it's but boxing is one of those sports. It's the cruelest of sports. You could, no matter what you're doing, you could win 11 rounds and 2 minutes and 50 seconds into the fight, and you could be just walking it, and one punch loses you the fight.
Before we come on to talk about stoppage, you mentioned there about the hand position. It's something that you mentioned in the preview show as well, that Leigh carries his
so clever guy.
Very clever. Barry Jones has his right hand here as opposed to up here, but you're happy with kind of from your technical point of view. There's that lovely shot from ringside that they do now with the phones where you can really see kind of in the ring, and there's that beautiful angle of where the left hook lands. You think there's anything that Leigh could have done differently, or was it just kind of
I don't
the way the fight played out?
I think so, and that again that moment of the fight, you're not going to be as sharp and as neat and as tight. I think the right hand on his head was perfect all night. He kept it nice and tight, well aware of that looping shot. Yeah. If anything, he was more there than there this time. So maybe that was the wrong thing to do. But he did expose the chin a little bit. But I just thought the looping shots were going to be a danger. And I thought Leigh always has that right hand bit closer on the chin, and we see Lara, he gets behind the shot and wobbles you. But no, he boxed really well. He was controlled. He didn't get drunk on his success when he landed with good shots. He didn't get carried away with it. Still tried to keep, even when he was being aggressive, he for most part tried to maintain that distance. So he boxed really well. But there was always that air of anticipation. When you're watching the tournament, I imagine it's the same thing. But when you're there, you're always thinking, every time Lara throws a punch, you're always going, before it lands. Ooh, here it comes. You're half expecting something to happen. So it's a good night and a good fight.
We discussed tactics beforehand, Andy, how Leigh Wood would approach the fight, how he would kind of go about his business, really. Obviously, we heard beforehand, both big punchers, both give opportunities to the other. So I think we all were kind of in agreement that we didn't expect the fight to go 12 rounds. It didn't go 12 rounds. Were you impressed with Wood's performance up to that point? I think I only really gave Lara the second round where he hurt Wood. And then after that, I didn't really give him anything. I felt like Wood was if anything, at that point in the fight, just starting to look comfortable, and then the fight was over. Yeah,
I thought it was a terrific performance. As I said, I listened to the radio coverage, but I did actually watch it. It's just I was watching it in our room, and my wife had gone to sleep, so I had to turn the DAZN sound off, because clearly I can't work out how to pipe that into my earpods. And so I flicked on the radio.
You're not the boss as well.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It will be so frustrating for him, because we were describing the finish there, and he really didn't do anything wrong. The right hand was up pretty much where it should have been. He opened out a little bit as he turned, and then Lara just hit him kind of like square on the chin, and that was enough. But up until that point, I had it the same. I had it 5-1 at halfway, and you could maybe have had 4-2, but he was boxing so well, and Lara was beginning to look like a man who was, at the very least, questioning the faith. Not necessarily losing the faith, but when you're a big puncher, and I've not watched every single one of his fights, but when you're a big puncher, when you hit someone, they go down, and generally they stay there. And then when you run into someone who doesn't, because he nailed him clean a few times, that can make you panic, or at least make you think a little bit. And he looked like he was in that place where he was thinking to himself, this hasn't really happened before. You know, your power is your religion, isn't it? If you're a massive puncher, like you believe in it completely. And then if you have a situation where it's not doing what it normally does, that could freak you out, I would imagine. And that's where he was, I felt.
And he was getting buzzed as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. He never looked like he was going to go down, but he was getting. He was
definitely feeling the weight. And straight right hands. And one of the things that you spoke about in the past is where you always reference Vladimir Klitschko, which I think is a really good example of it, of turning here and not falling over your front foot and allowing yourself to be put in that danger zone. I felt Leigh Wood did that very well. I felt like when he was landing the right hand, as you mentioned, he wasn't getting drunk on the success, and then the next right hand he wasn't launching into it. It was all very much twisting from here and keeping him at distance, which I was very impressed with.
My worry was that he was going to be, I think that Ben Davison is a very safety for sort of trainer, I think, and technically good, I would say. So, but he's always about, you know, thinking, not technical, safety first, a thinking trainer. So you always try to get his fighters to think, what's next, He tried to do with Josh, he did some really good, he did great work with Fury for the first fight against Wilder, and he turned some careers around. Let's not forget Leigh Wood being the big example. But he did it with Josh Taylor, made him overthink. And I thought this might be the case. I was worried about that he'd have him thinking, which is good, but overthinking. And you've got to be cautious and careful with Lara, but you also got to make him feel your power. But they got it right. He got the blend, and listen, Leigh would take all the credit because he did all the work. But I mean, them two combined got it just right. I thought because they just got the right blend of making him think, not over engaging, not waiting until it's the right time, but being busy enough and make sure he feels your power. And he did that, didn't he? He made him feel the power early, like Lara did. Like you always say about punches, make him feel, give it to him early, let him know what you got. And they both did it. They both did it. And I thought Leigh Wood's tactics were spot on. It was always an air of think, he took a good shot there, but all this thing about people go, he got caught. Like, we forget now, we criticise everything so much now, more than ever before. In a boxing, in a ring, it's a fight. You're gonna take a punch. I've never known a fighter not to take a punch. You know, and that's my new thing now. I say it all the time, but it is, though, isn't it? You're not gonna get in the ring and not take a punch. The best fighters on the planet take punches in fights. It's just knowing the risk and reward of it. That's all.
And he really held it together. When Wood he got hurt in the second round and he got cut early and he was marked up pretty early in the fight as well. And he never really looked as though he'd panicked. He never really looked as though, and he had a really good third round after that second round when you thought, oh God, so what's going to happen here? And he really held it together. But
who was the cutsman? Was it Jumbo? Ian Johnson?
Yeah, Jumbo. Yeah,
did a great job on that. And to be fair to Leigh Wood, he didn't even bother him.
No.
And that's a hard thing, because as much as it might not be affecting you, you feel that. But when you get cut, you're never sure. When it first happened, you're never sure if it's a cut until you see the blood, or a big welt, because all you feel is the pump. So you think it's a cut all the time, but it might just be a big swelling. I've had them when I've got a pumping like that as an amateur. It was just a massive swelling on my eye, but you just feel that pumping, so you panic then, you worry. But he never. And Jumbo Ian Johnson did a great job on it.
Right. We're going to go to the end of the fight, which is, of course, the big talking point. Andy, going to come to you first. Fair stoppage from Ben Davison, the right call, so to speak?
I think so. At the time, as I described earlier, it did take me by surprise, but that's just because you're so in the moment, watching what's happening and thinking in your head, what's going to happen now? He's got back to his feet. Is he going to be able to recover? Not long left in the round. Then the towel comes in, and you're a bit taken aback. It takes you a few seconds to process it. It did me anyway. And then I thought, actually, I can totally see why he's done that. He was very decisive, Ben Davison. He took the decision quickly. We saw one with Beterbiev Yard, which Tunde, a decision Tunde took, which again he was roundly praised for and correctly. But it was different because Yard went down. He wasn't as hurt as Leigh Wood, or he certainly didn't look it. So he let that go on 2 or 3 seconds. He let it restart and then stopped it. And Ben decided he couldn't take that risk because, okay, there's 10 seconds left, but that's long enough. That's easily long enough. And you just have to make a judgment in that situation. And it's always going to be a percentage call. We'll never know what would have happened if he'd allowed it to continue. But he obviously felt, and I agree with him, that the likelihood was that he was going to get flattened and that the likelihood of that happening was too high to allow it to continue. And I make him right on that score. I do understand people who say that they feel it should have been allowed to go on. I don't agree with them, but I do understand it. I heard Tony Bellew on DAZN saying why he felt it could have been allowed to go on a little bit longer, that yes, he was hurt, but he wasn't totally gone. You could see that from his reaction to the stoppage itself, and just running through a few reasons why he felt that they could have let that happen. But he was balanced with it, and he saw both sides. So that kind of train of thought, I can not get on board with it necessarily, but I can see where they're coming from. What I can never get on board with is what you might call the shield brigade, who just say that fighters have to go out on their shield, and they seem to think it's a fighter's obligation to just offer themselves up to get knocked out cold rather than stopped on their feet, rather than get pulled out by their corner, or God forbid, kind of pull themselves out, because what is that? What is that? You know, what are they? What do you want from these people? That proves their bravery. We all know they're brave, and I saw quite a lot of that flying around. I'm not talking about former fighters who say who go down that route, because they've earned the right. They can say what they want. But if you're an
doesn't
observer,
mean they're right though.
It does, but it doesn't mean they're right. But I do bracket it slightly differently. But with boxing fans, I don't. It just makes no sense to me, that at all. No sense whatsoever.
Barry?
Oh, it's been fantastic, haven't it? I've loved it. First of all, as a fighter, I would, as I had after the fight. If I was Leigh Wood after the fight, let's go back to when I got tall thrown against me. It's happened. So I was getting battered. I wasn't as hurt as Leigh, I don't think, but I've been down a lot more times than he had. And like you do in public, you just take it. Okay, fair enough, like that. And then when you go back to the change room, you get it, and then you go. I said to my dad, "Fuck's sake, what'd you do that for?" I was all right, because I'm gutted now. Like, I'll blame somebody. He's like, "What'd you do that for?" I was fine, and I did feel that way. But then now I'm glad he did that. But I mean, because otherwise, where would I be? I'd be probably a better place than this. But no offense. Seriously though, loads of offence. But but you know what I mean? It's the right call. And I saw as a fighter, I understand you would be frustrated, but like, I know there's 10. I don't know if there's 10 seconds, 6 seconds, 15 seconds. Like, I spoke to Ben Davison after. And we were doing a podcast after for 5 Live. Check it out. And I seen Ben. I ran up to him. I don't know Ben very well. I said that was the right call, and he just went, "I didn't know there was 10 seconds left." He's really gutted. He gutted because he went with his instincts, which was spot on. His instincts were 100% right. That kid didn't know where he was. Not really. You sort of know, you don't know. And no, it's people look like, let Lara hit you with a punch, a left hook, after going 7 rounds, 6 rounds of torture, and see how you're like, and then you'd be begging someone to throw a towel in. He did the right thing. He said, "I didn't know it was 10." I said, "It's irrelevant to me. You had the right call." And I do sort of understand that. Oh, if you can just get to the round, you can see how he is. You can always pull him out. But let me tell you now, at my age, I reckon I could throw in 10 seconds. Light punches, I reckon. All my punches were light. I reckon, no, seriously, light, half, fast punches. I reckon I could throw close to 80, 10 seconds. No, I'm not going to do it. No, seriously, I think I could. Generally think I could. So Lara can throw 6, 7, 15 solid, hard shots in 10 seconds. So all it's like, oh, you only got 10 seconds, 6 seconds and all that. He'd already put himself back in the centre of the ring, by the way, Lara. Right, he was like that. The referee would have gone, "Go on." "Oh, shit, he's on me." Yeah. And he would have gone, bam, 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 bam. And the referee would have jumped in, because the referee didn't know what to do. Yeah. If that was Lara hurt, or if that was an 8-rounder, he stops the fight.
Yeah.
the referee, right? Whoever it is.
It reminded me a bit of Eubank Smith, because should Eubank have been allowed to continue there? Probably not.
No, exactly. But it's the magnitude of the fight. You're thinking, oh, hang on a minute, this is the guy who don't get hurt, and all those things. And like, look at Carl Thompson and David Hay.
Yeah.
If that was anyone else, David Hay was undefeated.
Yeah.
But I just think as well, with Lara being the kind of finisher that he is, the chances of him kind of rushing in and going a bit crazy and then being a little bit easier to tie up, I think 10 seconds for someone like him is a long time.
I mean, we saw the Emiliano
It's a long
Sanchez fight.
time.
I think Nathan Heaney posted it afterwards when he said, next time you're talking about 10 seconds left, you see the clapper go.
Yeah.
And then he knocks Emiliano Sanchez out so brutally that it knocked the referee over.
But
I think he'd have taken his time. He would have
Yeah.
stepped in, taken his time.
Whether he does or whether he don't, when you've got a guy who's already hurt, and when you're tired as well, you can't focus properly. By the way, when you're knackered, your mind wanders when you're exhausted. In anything, you know what that's like. You was tired all the time walking up the stairs. You must get to the top of the stairs. You would think, was I
Get there faster, Barry.
Was
Come
it
on.
going up the stairs or down the stairs? And but like, he's literally like, you don't. So, and when you're being really hurt with a headshot, you're really panicking. You haven't got a clue what's going on. So he hits you anywhere. He's done. And I would say before he hit him with that great left hook, he'd already been hurt in that round already. He took a good right somewhere. He's got a really good right hand.
15 seconds before then, yeah.
Yeah, so he'd already been hurt. That was the right call. What you did find out, I know there's a saying, there's nothing worse than a brave trainer. Well, there is something worse than a brave trainer. They're brave journalists. Now, we have some journalists who've literally not just said, oh, I think you could have been allowed to go on, have called it disgusting. I'm paraphrasing here. I don't know, but have really been upright and forefront about how crazy, stupid the stoppage that was, and like brave journalists now.
That's
where does it fucking go now?
That's one of the most frustrating things about these debates for me, and it's something that's, without getting too existential about it, society-wide now, everything is just so polarised.
Yeah.
It's either you're for it or you're against it. It's all really binary. And with something like that, it's not the case that if you think it was the right decision, you think the other side are idiots. I don't think that people who have made a reasonable case for allowing it to continue are bloodthirsty barbarians who just wanted to see Leigh Wood get knocked out. There are some of them around who that seems to be, as I said, the Shield Brigade, but it doesn't have to be like that. But if you're going to say, oh, that was a terrible decision, you just think, what are you talking about? It's a really difficult split-second decision, and he made it. We'll never know what would have happened if they'd been allowed to continue. But like I say,
guess, haven't we?
Yeah.
But we can make a good guess. It's percentages. What in his head in microseconds. And I think it's really interesting that he didn't realise there was 10 seconds left. And good, because that shouldn't be a factor.
But there is an argument, though, that somebody in your corner, like they used to in my corner,
usually one of
has a clock.
Yeah,
we
usually
go,
one of the
we've only got 6 seconds, 10 seconds, 16, because he went down to like 16, 20 seconds, wasn't it? Something like that, he went down. So it's like, there, I understand that. But like, I thought it was the right decision straight away, because I wasn't aware of the clock when I was working, because I'm immersed in the fight. So I wasn't aware of the clock. I felt that was the right call. He looked like, I'm literally like, 12 feet away from him, and I'm like, cool, this don't look good. Like, this looks, he's all over the place, he is. And so, yeah. And he did acknowledge his corner, to be fair, but he acknowledged him while he was bouncing around on his toes.
Yeah.
And then his hands go up. Looking back in hindsight, and things slow motion, all these things all look better or worse. You can I've said this before, you can form it to your narrative. But it was the right call, I feel. And yeah, all these people talking about like brave journalists and all that, boxers. Carl Froch, on the night, we spoke to Carl after, and he was adamant it was the wrong call. Changed his mind when he seen it back.
Yeah.
When he listened to Leigh Wood, he changed his mind. Tony probably feels, I think Tony probably thinks, I probably shouldn't have been so strong about my
He's come out
opinion.
today and agreed with.
Oh, does he?
But yeah, carry on.
But I didn't know that. But I think
Yeah.
he probably just think, oh, I got to stick with my guns now. But and because you're thinking, oh, you would want to feel, you want to carry on, you want to be stretched, you don't want to be stretched out, but you think I'm willing to be stretched out. You don't know, you don't. But all these other people who like, especially, I'm not one of these guys who thinks my opinion is more valid than yours just because I've done it. That's absolute bollocks. That is that I know more about the sport than you. I've done more things in the sport. Doesn't mean that you can read the fight better than me. You can't.
No, but
No,
what it does give you is for
A
me,
different perspective,
For me, in
sure.
situations like this, and when we're discussing the thorny issue of whether somebody quit or not, I wouldn't feel like I could ever say that.
No, you
It's
could,
one of the
of
very
course, yeah.
few
Yeah,
situations
of
where I
course.
feel like,
But-
but you are more qualified to comment because you did keep getting up against Freitas, for example.
Yeah, but I mean, what I mean is, so, but I know that you don't know you're going to react in those situations. We've said that time and time again. But I mean, I've never had the opinion that just because I boxed, you can't talk about it. That,
Yeah.
all that's bollocks.
There's a general
But
sweeping
there's something when people start saying like, you know, he should be able to continue this. Like, you take a shot. That's when I want to say you take a punch.
Well, it's one of the things that I found
totally
quite
with
Shit
you
your
on
pants and go home, mate.
One of the things that I found
You
quite
would,
telling
you?
afterwards with when Josh Warrington was up there, and I understand the whole like Warrington was stopped by him, so he's going to say certain things, it's going to impact on how he kind of perceives it, certainly publicly. But when Bellew was saying, well, you know, we could do this, you could just sort of see Warrington going like, yeah, but he fucking really does hit hard. And if you look at the Warrington fight, I mean, I remember tweeting at the time this fight should be stopped when Warrington fought Lara the first time. He got dropped heavy, taking some big shots, and ultimately what happened was he was left in there and got brutally knocked out.
Everyone's panicking.
Yeah.
No one. We were moaning about the fight.
It wasn't supposed to happen.
It was
It was just Lara. I was doing it on the radio at the time.
But the fact that Warrington got left in there to be brutally dispatched the way he did after 3 or 4 rounds of sort of unnecessary punishment at the time, and you could just sort of see his reaction afterwards when he was up there with Bellew. But I think like the fact that you've just discussed there about Leigh Wood, Carl Froch, Tony Bellew, all kind of thinking one thing in the moment and then thinking about something differently. Ben Davison doesn't have the benefit of going to watch it and then going back. He has to make the decision there. And I spoke to Ben the day after fight, so yesterday, and he says, look, I think in the past I've shown a willingness, you know, Wood Conlon, Fury Wilder, like to let fights carry on and just have a look. And he said, but I felt like he was done. Now, I don't...
Because it was a hard fight, that's why. Even though he was winning, and he was winning, it's a fucking hard fight, that was. And he was knackered, and he was knackered. So was the other kid, to be fair. But the other kid hadn't gone down and banged his head on the canvas and all those things. And he didn't get up like Bambi and Bob. I don't know.
Even like when Fury got knocked down against Wilder, kind of even when he got up and he did the whole like to the side, he sort of jigged over, didn't he? He never looked like somebody just been nailed. And it was in the 12th round of the fight as well, whether or not that necessarily makes any sense.
Of course it does, yeah, of course it does.
But again, like so the kind of big, arguably the most famous example of something like this happening is Meldrick Taylor and Julio Cesar Chavez, where the siren's going in the corner for the last however many seconds of the fight. I felt like that fight should have been stopped because again, he was done, he was finished. You can't let somebody like Chavez or in this instance Lara come over and potentially have a free shot.
A couple of seconds,
Yeah.
And that was what the more I kind of think about it, what impressed me most about the call Ben Davison made was the fact that he just threw it in straight away. Yeah. It would have been really easy to think, okay, well, I'll let him restart it, and if it's going south, then I'll stop it. But you wouldn't be able to do it in time.
No.
Because if Lara just stepped
the damage already done.
You know, when I said earlier that he'd take his time, obviously he wouldn't take too much time, but step in, little feint, bang, massive shot, and knocks you out cold, then all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, I should have just thrown it. And he would never forgive himself for it.
But how many punches can a fighter throw?
Oh, there you go.
No, you know what I mean? People go on like, oh, you know, it's only 10 seconds.
Before the ref can get in.
He can hold on.
He
can hold on. The fella don't know where he is. How can he hold on?
I thought the referee should have stopped the fight. When he got up, I felt like he asked Leigh to put his hands up. He didn't put his hands up, and he wasn't following the referee's instructions. I felt like the fight should have been stopped.
But he did put his hands up.
But it was here. He didn't put them up. He didn't.
No, I think he did, mate. No, I think he did. I hope, if I'm wrong, I apologise.
We'll have a look at it afterwards. But I felt like I didn't feel like he was in a position to defend himself when the referee was there. No. He was swaying. When he got up, his legs were gone, and I feel like the referee should have stopped the fight then.
But the putting your hands up thing it means they can hear you. It still don't mean you know where you are.
No.
I mean, you put your hands up like that. You know, it's like someone says sit down when someone gets knocked out. You go have a seat, and he goes okay, but they don't know where they are, do they? It's just Though I did see one fighter get knocked out, and he said, a guy, I don't really like him, so I can say about it jokingly, and his legs locked. They asked him to sit down, his legs locked. He couldn't bend his legs. They were trying to bang his legs at the back. He couldn't sit down. He was fine. He's fine. He went on to have a decent career after, but his legs were locked out like that, and they couldn't sit him down.
It does amaze me, though.
I can laugh at that, though. I can't laugh at Leigh Wood.
Fighter's powers of recovery is incredible because, you look at the way he got put down, and just to be able to get back up by the 8 and realise what's happening, and okay, there's a bit of autopilot there and all of that, but it's incredible to me.
See, 'cause if he knows where he is, he stays on his knee.
Yeah,
and then
exactly,
gets up. If he really knows where he is, he's really aware.
there's
Of
the
it.
But
bit
the
where you
instinct is, what am I doing down here? I've got to get up.
Yeah.
The horrible thing when somebody gets hit with a big shot like that is when they go stiff. The arms go to the side,
Yeah.
and they go stiff, and that's how he fell. And you see him when you see the other angle of him getting up, and you see Ben Davison and Lee Wiley saying, take your time there. So as you say, the instinct is, I'm down, I need to get up, because he's not thinking about anything else, because he's so badly hurt. Just watching the stoppage again, he does put the hands up. If you look at kind of how he puts the hands up, we need to start getting some permission to use these. So we're just going to watch the stoppage now. So they sort of go there, and then put your hands up.
And look at Lara.
He's
Look at
not
Lara.
ready
Look
to
where
go.
Lara is there.
Do you know what I mean?
Lara's right on
He's
him, though.
ready to go.
And like I say, how many punches you can throw in 10 seconds? And him and the quality of his shots and those looping shots,
Yeah.
they hit you on the back of the head. He's already discombobulated.
Well, we saw, didn't we?
McIntosh, and he would be all over the place.
We saw the Kid Galahad Kiko Martinez fight. And, everybody said after that about the fact that he was allowed to go out and he got hit with a shot as soon as the round started. But that was different. That was the fight. As he got up, the bell went. So there was it was the end of the round. But having still sent him out after being hurt like that and for him to be brutally knocked out, I'd imagine something quite similar would have happened here if he did manage to survive the 10 seconds.
I would say one thing, though, and some people have said this, and they're sort of right. If every fight was stopped prematurely or with or cautionary or whatever, then we'd have no great fights. It's like, trying to just, and I sort of understand that as well. I do, the fact that trying to make boxing safe, this is sports in general now, let's be honest, trying to make it safe, especially with concussions, and that's right, of course it's right, and the American football, rugby, all those sort of things, it's understandable. But there is a worry as well that the sports are becoming not the sports they were, because you can't do things that you used to be able to do. Now, some things you used to be able to do are crazily bad, but also, where does it go before you've got to be careful that boxing doesn't become shadow boxing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With lasers on the India gloves. Which, by the way, I would be brilliant at that. That would be my sport.
Come out of retirement.
I would be like literally the Joe Kazagi of shadow boxing.
But it is a tricky dividing line, and I think what's been interesting about those three really big fights that we mentioned, Eubank Smith, Beterbiev, and then Saturday, is that we had stoppages in all of them, but in all three of them, the referee didn't stop it. Yeah. He let it go on. And you could argue maybe he should or he shouldn't, but the referees haven't been... I'm not saying that squeamish isn't really the right word, but that's why this is a difficult thing to address, because the referees allowed... At all three occasions, he allowed Eubank to continue. You could argue he shouldn't. He allowed Yard to continue. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. And he was going to let... By the look of it, he was going to let Leigh Wood continue.
Oh, yeah, he was.
So he was, wasn't he?
Yeah. No, I agree with what you say there, Barry, to the extent of, you have to, it's always going to carry that element of danger. You're never going to be able to rid boxing. I mean, if you look at, you watch a lot of amateur boxing, and the difference between a stoppage and the amateurs and a pro is still night and day. Like you can be stopped by, be hitting with a good shot and not really show that much of a response in the amateurs.
But the jabs have been stopped, haven't
they? Yeah. So
if you get remotely wobbled in the amateurs,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So obviously there is still that difference there, but yeah, for this, it's difficult because obviously boxing has changed in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways for the, pretty much in all of the ways for the more safer.
We're still having great fights, but we're never having those.
But what we can't as spectators of the sport or people who work in the sport, I don't think you can judge one fight based on something that we've seen. You have to take the fight for what happened in that moment, and I feel like the referee, I think still should have stopped the fight, but I think it was the right thing to end that fight there without thinking of other fights, without thinking of a rematch clause, which is another thing that people have said, well, if there was no rematch clause, he would let it carry on. I disagree. I think Ben Davison stopped the fight based on what was going on in that moment.
He's not thinking about it.
Exactly, yeah. I don't think he's thinking about what happens in, afterwards if we do this and we can get the rematch. I think in that moment in time, he looks at Leigh Wood and thinks, this isn't Michael Conlon. It's not early in the fight against somebody who's not really known as a puncher. I think he's just thinking, he's hurt here, he's there, we need to stop the fight.
He stops that fight with the risk of being sacked.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
Because again, as much as Leigh would have said all this now, the more sometimes you just go, why did you stop it? And it's worth, you always go back to yourself because you can, but it happened to me and I wasn't happy about it after. I smiled and all in public, but inside I was, and my dad, and we had a few discussions. He did the right thing. I love him for that. But I was like, fuck's sake, what if? Well, that what if shit in it again. But with Wood, he was winning the fight. And you think, and now for him, and he might be going, no, you shouldn't have done that, mate. Shouldn't have done it. I think social media will help their relationship, because people see more people, I think, are on board with what he said.
But
And
he might still go through that spell, Lee. It's still very fresh.
Well,
In a week or so, he might be sitting at home thinking, you know what? I don't know if that was, but I don't think it necessarily fractured their relationship.
We've seen it. We spoke about it.
You might have to work through that still.
We like Wilder and Mark Breland, and we've seen in the past about fighters having to rationalise why they lost. And
that's it.
Like I don't necessarily think this applies in particular to Leigh Wood and Ben Davison, but it might. He might in a week's time think, well, how do I justify the loss? Oh, well, it shouldn't have been stopped. I was winning, and I'd have recovered, and I'd have come. Look what I did against Conlon, and that sort of stuff. Like, because fighters have to process these things. Fighters not normal people. In their head, there's always a reason why I lost. And if this didn't happen, I would have done this.
It depends on your personality, doesn't it? I don't feel like Lee is one of these guys who's traded off his kind of invincibility. Yeah. So I think he'll be able to take it for what it is. But Eubank, for example, like we saw, didn't we, in the ring, like Wilder in the ring after the second fight against Fury, Eubank said all the right things. Half an hour later, the story's changed. Then a day or two after that, it's changed again, because we talked about it plenty, haven't we? But it's that selling the defeat to yourself. Yeah. I don't think Leigh Wood will feel the need to do that, but it just depends on.
You got it, and you got to find a reason why. Otherwise, if you tell the truth, I said about boxers being the biggest liars in the world, because you have to to own the truth about you getting beat up. You didn't get beat up, but getting knocked out or getting beat, because I got beat up. Owning it is difficult. Now I'm probably one of the most honest boxers about how good I was, about how much world titles are really worth. I was a world champion, but I don't put too much credence on it, and because I don't think all of us should, and also I got beat by a guy who I was never going to beat, but most don't do that. Mm-hmm. Some do, but most don't, and I understand that, because you don't. If you don't do that, and you find a reason why, you can carry on. Then that's what happened. I wasn't fit. I wasn't right. Something didn't happen. I had loads of excuses. We all have loads of excuses why, and you draw on them, well, you don't. But and I think and he might do that. So you might make Ben Davison a scapegoat. I think the only thing the difference is there is that him and Ben, the boxer makes the trainer. God's sake, I say that all the time. But he went from a domestic fighter to a world level fighter with him as a team. And I think he knows how much value he's put on his career.
Yeah.
And he saved his career for another day. I think that's the most important part there. You've saved his career for another day. He might have gone on. He might have gone on another round. He might have gone the distance. He might have won the fight. But that damage that he incurs, and you can't always think about. You can't think about Trish Dixon for something, because he
did damage.
The later damage in your career, and I understand, and that's a worry. It's a massive worry. But then you got to ban boxing if you make that a real focal point of how we judge and stoppages and how we look at fights, then you got to say, well, boxing is no good. You can't. No, it's going to be a damage. We're well aware of that. I mean, if you're not well aware of that, it will affect you when you retire, in some shape or form, some bad, some good. Then you don't know what you're just living in cuckoo land.
I think it's just touched on something that Andy said earlier. It's just, I guess, with Triss's book and Damage, I think it is an important work for boxing. It's just shaping the conversation around how these things happen and how it's perceived. Ben Davison throwing the towel in to save Leigh Wood for another day is not, as you mentioned earlier, it's not a disgusting, disgraceful thing that shouldn't have been done and blah, 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 blah. Or if a fighter has had enough because they've got a broken eye socket, or they've had, informing the discussion around it, so it's not he quit, he's got no heart, he's got no bottle, that sort of thing.
It's a complex thing. It's a really complex thing, and Dubois, he got absolutely hammered for that. But you've got to try and, in any situation, if you're trying to assess what somebody has done, why they have done it, that's empathy. Now, it doesn't mean you agree with them. Empathy, sympathy, they're not the same. But if you can try and figure out why somebody has done something, then you can have a more reasoned debate about things. And there are difficulties with boxing, of course there are, because it's never going to be safe. And if we try and make it totally safe, then it won't be the sport that we love. It's just as simple as that. And Triss's book, what's so interesting about it is that he is a hardcore boxing fan, Triss. He doesn't want to change anything on the night. He's talking more about how can you minimise unnecessary damage, is what he's talking about. And allowing a fight to continue when a fighter is out on their feet, to see them flattened, that definitely comes under the heading of unnecessary damage.
Yeah, I think it's like you said about being polarized. Like you can't have a balanced opinion. It's got to be there or there.
Yeah.
And I think that's because straight away you go with the thing with Trish. You go, oh, so what are we gonna have? Like VAR for boxing? Are we all, doctors got to come in after every 3 rounds and check you out, and you got to go after 6 rounds. You got to go to the back of the arena and have an MRI scan and wait for 20 minutes, then continue the fight. I'm being facetious,
Yeah,
but
I know
but you're worried about that. It takes away the sport. And I was angry with Trish first of all. I gotta be honest. When I didn't read the book, I did in the end, and I didn't first of all. I just thought, oh, here we go. This is the editor of the boxing news. No, he's not the editor of the boxing news. He's made a living from covering fights. No, he's not doing that, and he's still boxing still his career. He's writing a book now to maximise, and that's what it felt like for me. Because you're like, well, I still work in the sport, and I love this sport, and you're trying to put a light in it why it should be banned. He wasn't, but that's your first thought.
That is, yeah.
He's very defensive. Oh, hang on a minute, what are you on about?
Actually, what he's doing is trying to come up with a way of how we can, as time evolves and society changes, he's trying to come up with suggestions for how we can make it achieve more longevity.
We spoke about
that's
this.
what it's about.
I talk about fights, talking the lamppost.
Yeah.
Forget about fighters in the 80s and the 70s, and some of those are like in horrendous shapes. I know a guy now, he's like, used to be my boss. Wally Anglis, he's in a care home now, bless him. He's only 70. 70's young now, this generation. He's in a care home. Like, I was talking to him, like, my boss, he wasn't very nice to me, actually, but we had a good time, and he got me out of the hole. I always love him for that. But, like, we had a conversation for like 2 hours, but on one subject. We went round and round the same. He kept forgetting. Every 50 minutes, he reset. And boxing's done that. All right, it's lifestyle as well, I understand that, but boxing have done that. And you go, whoa, and there's some other fighters, and I know fighters in my generation, my age, no, 32, and and they're talking to lampposts. Like I've said, they're lost, they're shot, and that's the thing that Trish was on about. There should be something there. There is something there, but no one wants the promoters, the Ringside Trust and Care. I always get the name wrong, but
Ringside Charitable Trust.
Thank you. And they want to help. They're trying to think, but no, people in the sport who have the wealth don't really want to contribute because I don't know why.
Yeah, we spoke. I couldn't remember. We spoke about it fairly recently.
Rob,
I think
that's directed to you. That
yeah,
was.
thanks, mate. I got that. Where we spoke about it fairly recently, where it's again like Triss's book and a lot of the other research that's been done from fighters from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and what have you. We're still playing catch up with the science, if that makes sense. So there's been studies that have done by people because obviously CTE is something that you diagnose when somebody's died. There's not a way to do it while they're alive. Okay, you can look out for warning
and they have
signs.
to give you permission to do it.
Yes, exactly. So we're still, you're always inevitably playing catch up with the science, so to speak, and the sport will always do that. And I feel like, yeah, we are getting there to try and make the sport as safe as possible, but obviously we understand that it's boxing, it's always going to carry that danger. Right, we must move on because we have to try and talk about a few other little bits and pieces. Namely, first of all, let's talk about the winner of the fight, Mauricio Lara. Andy, going to come to you first. 2-part question for both of you is going to be, 1, what did you make of his performance? And 2, who would you like to see him box next?
I think his performance will give encouragement to others. I think it will, because he was well down. If you win by stoppage in the 7th round, you can only really classify that as an emphatic win. But because it's so far out from the tape, you can't say that Leigh Wood nearly beat him. But if you're going to be very black and white about it, but he was getting outboxed. So I think it will definitely encourage others. It will reinforce also the fact that, cliche though it is, he's dangerous for every second that he's in there.
Yeah.
But in a sense, you can't worry about that too much because that is just a fact. And maybe he will uncork one on you and you make a fractional error if you could even describe it as that, which as Leigh Wood did, and then all of a sudden you're gone. Look at what Wood did and how he did it, and how Lara struggled to cope with it. I think people will fancy him more now maybe than they did before that fight. As for who next, the narrative seems fairly set, doesn't it? They're both with Matchroom. Warrington was there. He went over to ringside, went all WWE.
Spat at him?
Spat at him, apparently, as well, which is pretty filthy, to be
yeah,
honest.
I just, sorry to interrupt. I mean, on that point, I don't understand how there are people who are, oh, well, it's Warrington, he headbutts people. Yeah, good that he spat at him. Sorry, what? Like, yeah, how is that? So what is it because Warrington uses the head in his fight if Mauricio Lara went over to him and I don't know, attacked him with a hatchet or something like that. Oh, it's okay then, is it? Like, I don't understand that. Whether you like Warrington or not, I don't see how people can be grown men are okay with another guy spitting on somebody else.
It's grim. It really is. But it's kind of interesting because you don't get too much out of Lara when you're an English speaker yourself and the fighter doesn't speak English. You don't really get too much of a sense of their personality, and he's quite intense and a bit brooding, isn't he? And he kind of behaves like ferocious punchers do, or kind of how you want them to. You just kind of think, oh, okay, this guy's a bit scary. So I don't really know how his mind works in a kind of marketing sense, or whether he's really got that in there or not. But what he did after the fight finished was it was kind of ideal, really, wasn't it? It was perfect because if you're him, you've already beaten him once in royal fashion, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, I'll just fight him next. If I win, I'll just go and call him out and fight him next. And come over to the UK, command a big purse for that, and beat him again. Happy days. That's what he's thinking, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he does as well, to be honest.
Do you think that's the fight that they make next? Do you think they try and do Lara Warrington 3?
Well, I think they want to do it. But if Leigh Wood's got a rematch with him, yay. Then I think he's rightfully, the way he was boxing so well, I think he'll want to do that, but about the time scale, I don't know how he's going to recover. I'm sure he's fine, but he'll want a bit of a break, I feel. I tell you who beats Lara, and people might say, no, because Leigh Wood knocked him out. Michael Conlan. I honestly do, I think he dances rings around him. Because I think with Michael Conlan is, like, as much as I know he can get caught, as we've seen, he won't hold his feet for a second. And what he'll do as well, he'll spin around him. And I think that's what no one has done against Lara, because they haven't been able to. And Leigh Wood's shown he can outbox him. The difference between Leigh Wood and Conlan and Lara and Conlan is Leigh Wood's got a bit of a height and reach, so he can close the distance a bit better. I think those looping punches, I think Conlan will be able to just slip and slide underneath him. I think it's a great fight for Conlan. I mean, that's that danger of any second. And I think he would have learned off the Leigh Wood fight about a bit more strength in his training to get that for the later rounds, and not trying to load up when you're not. You want to load up and you want to try and get something to hurt, but at some point in your career you got to go, this is what I am. And look what happened in the Leigh Wood fight. I was trying to knock him out, and I was using energy that I don't naturally have, and then I was spent in a fight that I was winning, and then my energy was done. If he wouldn't have tried to knock him out so much, I know he's caught with a great shot, and maybe his tactics changed early in the fight, but if he just went about his business, he might have stopped him anyway. I'm not saying he couldn't, but I mean, he got more energy because he's a thinker all the time. So I think he beats Lara. I just think stylistically, I think again, Warrington, it's just wrong for Warrington. It's this stage of Warrington's career, and what we've seen him with Lopez as well. Again, it was a close fight, but I think Warrington's just lost a little step. Still a good fighter, and I wouldn't be shocked if he beat Lara, but I would pick Lara as a favourite. Yeah. But no, Leigh Wood could beat Lara, I think.
It's interesting times at featherweight. You've got Robeisy Ramirez versus Isaac Dogbay on the 1st of April for the vacant WBO.
Oh, it's vacant, is it? Okay.
Yeah. Navarrete vacated and moved up to 130.
Everyone's happy about that, isn't he?
Yeah. Although his last fight didn't look great in his last fight, Navarrete. But anyway, and then you've got Bernardo Lopez has got the IBF. That seems to be the route that Michael Conlan potentially is going down, both for top rank.
That's a winnable fight for Conlan.
Yeah, similar-ish sort of ways that the Lara fight is, isn't it? It's a
Lara's more dangerous puncher than
Lopez. And I feel like Lopez is probably a better boxer than Lara.
Yeah, Lopez is hard to read, but I think Conlan's boxing brain
is good for both of those styles.
Yeah, certainly Lopez, yeah.
And then the WBC, we're waiting to see what happens with Ray Vargas. If Ray Vargas comes back down to featherweight, he takes the featherweight title. If not, it's Brandon Figueroa versus Mark Magsayo for the vacant title, which I think is a good fight. Yeah. It's just interesting to see whether or not, I guess it all kind of, you have to take your lead from whether or not Leigh Wood enforces the rematch. If he calls for the rematch, then you see Lara versus Wood 2, Conlan versus Lopez. You see Josh Warrington probably waiting for the winner, maybe as an interim fight, and then fights the winner of Lara versus Wood 2. Or you see Wood versus Warrington, Matchroom not wanting to miss out on that fight. And then you could maybe see Mauricio Lara versus the winner of Bernardo Lopez versus Conlan, the winner of Dogbay versus Robeisy Ramirez. I mean, there's a lot of good fights to be made, and a lot of,
isn't it?
And I feel like the winner of the Saturday's fight, which was of course Mauricio Lara, is the number one in the division.
Yeah.
I think the best featherweight in the world is Robeisio Ramirez,
Yeah,
and I think if he comes past Isaac Dogboe and proves that, I think he'll be the number one. But with the wins that Lara's got now, knocking out Leigh Wood, knocking out Josh Warrington, he's rightfully the number one in the division.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot to kind of sort out for pecking orders,
I think Warrington might sneak in and get Lara before Wood gets him. I think. Whether he wins or not, who knows? But I mean, I don't know. I think Lara would be happy with the quick turnaround.
And I think
Yeah,
he'll
I
want
was
to
just
come
gonna
over
say
here
that,
as well. I think
yeah.
he'll want to come to the UK because he's now got recognition.
Why wouldn't he?
Why would he not? Why would he want to fight in Mexico or fight in America against, as the A side of the bill against?
He looks every
15.
inch a kind of old school prize fighter.
Yeah,
doesn't he?
yeah.
But I tell you what,
Biggest purse, bring it.
Yeah,
I was opposite Warrington. Every now and again, I looked down at him. Not too often. He was like this. I mean, he wasn't watching the fight. He was watching the fighters, and that's different. There's this difference. He wasn't watching. I don't think he really knew what was going on in the fight. He was watching them two, like really studying them, like he really because he just thought, I'm getting the winner here. And I think I got a feeling he was watching Lara more than Wood. I got a feeling because he's probably thinking, he's watching on video again, but seeing it in person. Oh, did he do that to me?
Yeah.
I guess. You want to know why? Because that second fight, who knows what was going to happen there?
Yeah, that's a good point, that, because that'd be kind of fascinating for you, wouldn't it? Because you've been in there with him twice,
Yeah.
but to actually watch him
Yeah, and even because sometimes you watch
in
a
the
fight,
flesh would be different.
like when you're in a fight, you can't judge how you're doing sometimes,
Yeah.
or how bad it is or good it is. But then when sometimes you watch it back in the third person, you go, "I wasn't that bad," or "Oh, bloody hell."
Do we think that Wood takes the rematch? Andy, come to you first. Sorry.
Well, people generally do, don't they? And I think, given the nature of the defeat, I think he's definitely got a few hard weeks ahead of him where his mind will to and fro, and maybe there'll be the odd day where he's cursing Ben and all the rest of it, like we were talking about before. But I think ultimately that relationship will be okay, and he'll be able to sell it to himself, probably by saying, well, I was winning and then I got caught, and it can happen to anyone, and it was fractional, and almost I was a bit unlucky.
Yeah.
So I expect he will want to activate the rematch clause. It's very, very rare now that people don't. I think they feel a pressure to do it as well.
Barry, you love a rematch?
No, but this is a warranted rematch. I think it's right. I think there's so many positives from that fight for him to not want to take a rematch. I mean, you'll dismiss the knockouts, except for being knocked out. Everything was fine. He took shots. It's impossible not to take shots against a guy like that, and you're gonna get hurt. And he was hurt a few times, but never. No, it was only a few times you go, ooh.
Yeah. If it would have been like the fifth, Lara started to get on top of him, then he had a really hard sixth round, and then he got knocked out in the seventh. Then it's slightly different. And
this narrative about Lara early or Wood late. Oh, fuck's sake. It's just lazy, that was. But I hear people saying that, and potentially that way. But Lara can knock you out in round 11.
Yeah.
People think he couldn't carry his power. Literally, just watch the Warrington fight. That was 8 rounds. No, it's ridiculous. People think you got to get it early. That was never going to be the case. Wood can knock you out early. He can punch.
I love it when with the whole prediction thing. I do love it when people are asked
It's lazy, that, isn't it?
Well, when people ask for a prediction and say,
They give
I
3
think
options.
either this or that, and you just think, hang on a second, that's not really a prediction, is it?
no,
My
it's a way of covering all bases, isn't
The
it?
thing is, though, you're afraid.
My favourite for that was Wilder Fury. It was, he's well, I think, he's like Fury, either Wilder by knockout or Fury on points. Well, what else do you want to throw in?
It could be a draw.
A
as well,
DQ.
like,
Things that people think that you're
no
picking.
contest.
So I picked, I didn't care. I wanted Wood to win, but again, it doesn't affect my life. Let's be callous about it. But I thought Lara would win. I thought Lara would stop him. I didn't want that to happen. But you got to I think some people are afraid now. If they give an opinion, they're almost like saying you're shit.
Your team,
It's
Lara.
not you give an opinion.
Yeah.
I'm going to think against anyone else. So that's who I think's going to win. Not who I want to win.
yeah.
It's just who I think's going to win.
There's that, and it's also like the safeguarding of getting things wrong as well. So, well, I did say they could have been either a points knockout. Draw,
The best was when
early,
they picked the British fight, and then and when they got beat, they go, yeah, but I had to be.
I had to back my
patriotic."
own. I had to back my own.
Yeah,
Okay.
that game is it's mad, isn't it? Because there's nothing wrong with being wrong.
No.
If you do what we're doing, you don't want to be wrong all the time. But there's nothing wrong with being wrong.
That's right. I know.
You know,
He's back
it's-
with a world title, and I.
Hey,
He got one thing. He got one thing wrong.
okay, right. Before we move on from this past weekend, we said beforehand that there wasn't an awful lot from the undercard for us to kind of get excited about, really. One of the fights that we did discuss was Dalton Smith against Billy Allington. I think we all referred to it as, you know, if not a mismatch, then certainly a fight that was very much stacked in one favour, that being Dalton Smith. Andy, decision win for Dalton Smith, which I don't think anybody was really anticipating beforehand. He's come in for a bit of criticism for his performance. What did you make of his performance against Billy Allington?
I thought his performance was kind of fine, really. It's one of those fights where Allington will emerge with credit and his stock increased, and rightly so, because I don't think many people felt that he'd be able to negotiate 12 rounds with Dalton. And so it's one of those situations where I prefer to give him some credit rather than criticise Dalton Smith overly.
That's you know what that is? That's the equivalent of that early. Oh, would be. I'm joking.
Barry, come on to you.
No, I think Allington, loads of credit.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'd rather think of it that way. No, I think no. Well, I did say on the radio. I said, like, you got to think Dalton's got to get this done early, and like, you know, and I think, you know, if it goes past 4 rounds, then Allington's really. I've covered some of Allington's career, so, and you've seen him. We
spoke
together, haven't we?
about the Darko fight.
Yeah, but it was all about. But I said, but it's all down to how tough Allington is. But he wasn't just toughness. He was sitting back. He had a big wide stance. He had that front, and he was just making Dalton think. Dalton's say this is going to sound ridiculous. I think his brain's getting in the way of him. I think he's overthinking everything. He's a really clever fighter, and he got a really good boxing brain. He's technically really good. He's not a huge puncher, but he can clean puncher, and I think he can get you out of there. But he can confuse you, and he's not confusing fighters. He's picking them apart. He's not confusing them like we've seen earlier in his career. And I think his brain's getting in the way. Because he's stepping him in levels, he's seen him a little bit cautious, thinking, I don't want to take any risks. And he's right, I don't want to take any risks. And I want to make sure I get it right. But he's a really talented fighter, and I like him. And he won conclusively. But I think he could have done better. And he should have done better. Let's just be honest. He could have and should have done better. Billy Allington, you know, comes up with loads of credit, like Andy said, and he deserves that. Because he took a real, you know, precocious talent there, and he made him, not winning anything, made him work and made him not look so great, and then opened him up for criticism. And that for Allington, who shouldn't have been boxing for the title, I felt, showed that, you know, that he'll be an opponent of some fighters who are on the way up, and he might, you know, and his career opens up a little bit for him, and I'm happy for that. But yeah, Dalton's brain's getting in the way of himself, I think, at the minute. It
was similar with the Sam O'Mason fight, which is the fight where Dalton won the British title, where O'Mason didn't really give him an awful lot. And Dalton's that kind of front foot counterpuncher, wants to draw your lead and then come up with the big single shots. And if he doesn't get that, that's where the next stage of his development has to be, whether it's a second phase or just injecting a bit of pace into his work. Is that what you feel like he was missing?
Well, Lennox Lewis did it in some stage of his career where, because a real good, great fighter and a really good boxing brain, Lennox Lewis, I don't think he got enough credit for that. But he sometimes used to overthink stuff and be in some stinkers where he just jab you. And then great fighters, they know when to just switch their brain off. They're not totally sorry, but enough to go, I got to commit to you. Yeah. I got to change something here, otherwise this is going to be, I'm going to win, this is going to be one of those. And that's the difference. Some fighters like me couldn't do that, we had to just do what we could do. But Dalton's a bit better than that, and I think certainly at this level, he should be switching it on more. And taking that, everything's a risk, but taking that educated risk, I think. But, you know, he won. He wins.
What do you think they'll do with him now? Because
Sam Maxwell was the fight
plan,
next.
isn't it?
Yeah,
that's
Sam
the
Maxwell.
plan. How do you two rate that? I mean, with someone like Dalton, he's still young, obviously, but you never want someone to stagnate. Do you?
I feel like it's the right fight for him. I feel like the Allington fight was kind of going to be a hide into nothing, in a sense of, if Allington would have came out and had a go and he'd have got stopped in 3 or 4 rounds, people would have talked about it being a mismatch. If what happened at the weekend happened, which obviously it did, and Allington kind of was very negative and kept things quite tight. I mean, we saw Dalton get frustrated, lots of use of the forearm. We had the body slam, which I thought was incredibly reckless when you're ahead so far in a fight like that. So those are things, I guess, from the mentality for him to kind of look at and work on going forward. But I feel like he needs somebody who's going to come there and try to win now. I don't, with respect to Sam O'Mason and Billy Allington, I don't think either of those came to win the fight. Casey Benjamin did. Casey Benjamin came and won some rounds, and I know Dalton Smith was unwell before that, but on the night you kind of judge what you see. But I feel like Maxwell is at the stage of his career where if he loses to Dalton Smith at British level, he's pretty much got nowhere else to go. And Sam Maxwell is somebody who will throw shots, who will come out, get behind the jab. He's a good puncher, so that's something that Dalton Smith will have to think about. So I feel like that's the good fight for him next. Obviously Dalton had a cart, so whether or not they're going to potentially look at pushing it back maybe sometime in May. I know the original date was end of April, but I think that's the right fight for him. I don't think he needs any more around English, because with respect to O'Mason and
that would see him win the belt outright as well, wouldn't it? Because Casey Benjamin was a mandatory, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Because you need 4 British title wins, but 1 needs to be a mandatory. So that would do it for him. If
So he would win. He will win the title outright. Sam Maxwell still has the Commonwealth title as well. So for the British and Commonwealth title. So that will be next for him. And I think it's about time. I don't think he needs any more fighters who, with respect to Allington and O'Mason, are kind of English level boxing for the British title. So that's. But
I think Maxwell's the last step, and he's got to move on from there. Then I think now. You're saying that he hasn't had many fights himself, but I think the Maxwell fight's a good fight for him as well, stylistically.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
because again, a good technical boxer, Maxwell, but upright, and I think that'll be where Dalton Smith shines.
And will throw. I think he'll throw his shots, which is something that we didn't see.
He can bang, as we've seen. So you got a good right hand, and he can throw a straight shot down the middle. But I think that'll suit a conventional fighter. Will always be good for Dalton Smith.
Final one from this past weekend before we move on. We went stateside for a fight that we all kind of anticipated being a bit of a banger, and a banger it was. Lewis Nery. Lewis Nery getting the late stoppage win over Hovhannisyan. Crazy A is a much easier way to refer to him. Great fight. Great performance from Lewis Nery, who's somebody, he hasn't always seen the best of him. He's been ill-disciplined. He's kind of everybody's favourite bad guy of the lighter weights, I think, over recent years, but turned it on in good fashion at the weekend, Andy.
He did. It was a great fight, and he is a really good fighter. He's just been very frustrating because of his inability at times to make weight, and I kind of gave up on him after a while, because the way it all went down with Yamanaka was bad, and it's a great example of why a fighter shouldn't feel pressured to take a fight anyway, even if the opponent misses weight, because it can go south, and that one did. And there were instances after that where he was on cards and then either pulled out and you suspected it was because he wasn't going to make the weight, or then again didn't. And I just kind of had enough of him, to be honest. But he's always been good, and he's always been really good to watch, and that hasn't changed.
Hovhannisyan played his part. Those middle rounds were brutal.
Yeah.
Oh, brutal.
Oh God, yeah.
I'd rather be knocked out than have those 3 or 4 rounds. The whole fight was hard, but I mean those middle rounds were. And Nery had to show his mettle. Yeah. By the way, I thought he'd get beat, Nery, again because of that. Because he's Broner-esque, isn't he? Like a real talent who's just going to waste it. That's what it felt like. The real talent who's world level, wins the world title. He's brilliant, but he could be better. And it's just crazy to say, but I thought he was going to get beat. I thought Hovhannisyan would have been too much for him. Just kept coming on. And I don't think, with Nery, the worry that he doesn't really train as hard as he should, with a lot of precocious talents, because they always get by, because they're so brilliant, and he got power, that he just thinks he's good enough for anybody, to beat anybody on his day. And I thought that work ethic would have been too much for him, but it wasn't. He's brilliant. Good finish as well.
That's what a lot of people felt like going into the fight. Hovhannisyan, remember the Brandon Figueroa fight where Figueroa was just on him, suffocating him. No matter how hard you punch, I'm going to keep walking through you. And Nery said after that loss and then splitting with Eddie Reynoso kind of made him refocus. And it was the type of fight of the weekend. And the fight played out in the style where if Nery wasn't 100% committed, if Nery didn't do the work, he could have lost that fight.
He would have lost it. Yeah, definitely.
But he stayed in there, and Hovhannisyan, I feel like it was kind of strange. I felt like in the 10th round, Nery kind of allowed Hovhannisyan to throw his shots a little bit more, and it looked like Nery was gassed. It looked for a couple of rounds like 8th, 9th, and 10th. Yeah. And then he just kind of let him throw, and then uncorked that left hand, and then after that he
just
was
caught him right on the back.
Yeah, and Hovhannisyan, no matter how hard you are and how tough and strong you are, I mean, his face was a mess from about the 2nd or 3rd round.
The toe could be thrown in any time.
Yeah,
that kind of. You look at it, the way he wobbled and.
I didn't see the scorecards, but I'd been really interested.
I think it was relatively close.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if it was very close, because I feel like Nery was landing the more eye-catching shots, and he was hurting Hovhannisyan, but Hovhannisyan just wouldn't go away, and he was.
And again, that middle part, but it looked like I thought Nery might have got a second, like was pushed on a bit, and Hovhannisyan really dug in, didn't he?
Yeah. But yeah, Nery, as I mentioned, I still want to see the fight with Inoue. I feel like because of the Yamanaka stuff, like I'm sure this is correct. I'm sure somebody will remind me if I'm not. But I think Nery is banned from ever fighting in Japan because of what he did to Yamanaka. Yeah, he is despised in Japan. He missed weight the first time. I think it was the first time he missed the weight, and then he failed for this performance enhancing drugs for the second one, or the other way around. So he's like, and obviously Yamanaka was a beloved fighter from Japan, and there's always been that talk when they were both down at, I think when Inoue was at Superfly and Nery was at Bantam, and there was always the will they won't they. Now they're both up at Super Bantamweight. I'd still love to see that fight, because
it's even a better fight.
It's such a good versus evil fight. That's what you want. You want a protagonist, and you want somebody that everybody wants to see get chin. But I was impressed with Nery. I was really impressed with him, and I feel like now it looks as though Inoue and Fulton are going to box. You've got Akhmadaliev there at Super Bantamweight. You can see that fight.
I gotta say, Inoue moving up in weight, and his first fight is Fulton.
Yeah, it shows
that's
who he is.
That's what great fighters do, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what great fighters do, man. It's just unbelievable. But like Nery, like you just need to show what he's like when he's focused and fit. Because you have to be fit for that. You have to be fit for that.
Yeah.
How old is he now?
28.
Is that what he is? Isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the lower weights, isn't it? I suppose. So traditionally,
he turned pro.
You don't go on.
He was young. Yeah, he was young when he turned over. Yeah.
But it's maybe a good example of someone realising just in time.
Yeah.
That they're going to waste it.
That's brilliant. That's just in time as well. Yeah, just in time.
Yeah, and I think that's basically what he'd said. He after the fight. Yeah, he's 28. Yeah. After the fight with Brandon Figueroa, it's kind of like right now or never. Really.
Yeah.
And Brandon Figueroa is a good fighter, and you could potentially see that fight again at some point. I know he's gone up to featherweight now, but Nery, you never know, could end up going up there. Certainly talented enough and punches hard enough. But yeah, while we're kind of hovering around the subject, Inoue versus Fulton, Barry, talk to me.
It's about the size, isn't it? Inoue, I got to pick. You can't. I just can't go against Inoue. I just can't. I think he can box as well. He's not just a puncher, and he's straight down the middle. Like Fulton's brilliant, skillful, lovely movement. It's just the only worry is that he can't because he hasn't got that presence anyway. But I just think he's too neat. I think he does. I know you could look at the fight, the Paul Butler fight, and it took him a while to get Paul Butler out of there, and that could be a case where you just think the Fulton has got a really good chance. I think he has, but I go Inoue. Stoppage. Always.
Second half of the fight, grind him down.
Yeah, I think it's Inoue early or Fulton.
Andy, how about yourself?
I think it might go the distance, but I would pick Inoue as well, because I think we all know the power that he's got and how devastating he can be, but I think he doesn't get drunk on it. I think he can do it either way. But Fulton, as you say, is he is a really good fighter, but it's just difficult for me to pick against Inoue. And as we know, at those lower weights, the gaps between weights aren't that big. Yeah. And 4 pounds is not insignificant by any stretch. But at the same time, Yeah.
It's not just £4, is it? 'Cause he's come from another weight and another weight. You know what I mean?
He started to
Yeah,
get tight
yeah.
now at bantam, hasn't he? His last couple of fights, he said about it. I think he had to reweigh for the Butler fight as well. And
But when you've got that power he has, it's again like Fulton's brilliant. Fulton goes in there with no worry or care about what he can do, aware of what he can do, no care, and you box freely, then he's got a really good chance. But someone like Inoue, because his reputation, like a Golovkin, reputation and a Canelo, reputation precedes you.
yeah.
You don't have to do that work, making me feel the power really. You know it's there. So straight away you're already really tense and really aware that every mistake's gonna be you're gonna pay the ultimate price. So that affects how you box. And that's what he does. Anyway, it makes it easy. He makes it easy for him because he's done all the hard work in his other fights where he's been batting people out. But some fighters don't care about that. I think that's if Fulton has that attitude that's irrelevant, then I think he's got a really good chance. But I think he will be aware of what Inoue can do and will box a little bit more too tentative.
I like Inoue in the fight. Yeah, I think Fulton's a very good fighter. I thought Brandon Figueroa beat him. I thought it was a very close fight, and I have no arguments about it going either way. But I thought
it could have gone the other way.
I felt like Figueroa nicked that, and I just don't feel like Figueroa sometimes can smother his work 'cause he's such a giant at the weight.
Yeah.
Gets a little bit too close sometimes, and I feel like sometimes his work's not really
He's a big guy, but
appreciated.
he likes boxing Mexican style.
Yeah, he's Mexican style. There we go. Okay, right. Last one before we move on. Nery versus Akhmadaliev. Andy.
Akhmadaliev is someone I saw quite a lot in the amateurs, and I liked him in the amateurs. He boxed Conlon in the World Championship final in Doha, and he put him down right towards the end of the fight. And I always felt he was a great example of someone who thrived on the change to the scoring system, because they went to the 10-point must from computer scoring 2 years before that. And you started to see fights that stylistically you wouldn't have seen before. And he was one of them. And you looked at him and you just thought he's definitely going to make a good pro. And he obviously has, because he's become unified champion in under 10 fights, I think. But I think Nery will probably beat him, to be honest. But I like it. I like it as a fight. He's kind of trod water a bit. Akhmadaliev fights have been rumoured, but haven't really come off.
Tread water in 10 fights.
No, but
you're
it's
right.
mad
Oh,
that
yeah, no, it is.
the fights that have been rumoured haven't really come off, because he's had 2 belts for quite a long time, and you're waiting for undisputed, and it's not really happened. And I think it's a great fight for both of them.
Yeah, I think it's a really good fight. I know, obviously, the past weekend, Nery is now mandatory for the WBC, which is held by Fulton. But if Inoue Fulton happens, and don't know what's next in the rotation, we'll kind of wait and see.
I think that the Nery of this, what the energy he showed in this, gives him a better chance than what I thought. But I think Akhmadaliev's movement around the target is brilliant. So I make him a favourite. I think he wins.
Really good fight. Really, really good fight. Right, we have about 15 minutes left to talk about the big fight coming up this weekend.
It's 29 minutes.
Yeah, but I need to do something afterwards. So we've
got
got 15, we've got 15 minutes.
Side hustle, they call it.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm talking about the return of one of the big superstars in boxing. Unfortunately, it's not Adrian Broner, because we were all looking forward to him returning. But Jake Paul.
Were we?
Yeah, I was. Team AB forever.
So we're having 15 minutes on Jake Paul.
We're doing
That's wicked.
13 minutes on Jake Paul. Yeah, sorry, I know.
He's off the Saudi, isn't he?
We were. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
So we're gonna go to Skill Challenge Entertainment's Andy Clark for his initial breakdown. Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. Have they the truth? That's this one. I was going to say, has it been given anything? I'm actually going to interview the promoter of the event shortly after this, which I'm really looking forward to. Shout out War Promoter. So, but anyway, Andy, what are you expecting when you go to Saudi?
I was there for the press conference a couple of weeks ago, and there was a mad amount of interest in it from the domestic media. I don't think there's going to be that many international media there, but ESPN will be there, BT will be there to put it on box office. And the reason I'm going is I'm working on the international coverage, and it's a full team they've put on it. A lot of the time, as Barry knows himself very well, it's just commentators.
Well, usually it's just a commentator.
Yeah, and then you fill in the gaps. But for this, it's a full broadcast team. So they're ambitious with it. They're sending it everywhere they can send it. And there is a lot of interest in it, because Jake Paul commands an awful lot of eyeballs. Within boxing, I think there's more interest in this than there has been in fights like this previously, because what I like about it is that this is a proper fight. It's not high-level boxing, but it's a proper fight in that they're well matched, the stakes are high, there's pressure on both of them that they'll put on themselves to win. And in that regard, I think it will be a decent watch. We've got a WBC Cruiserweight World title fight on the undercard, Badou Jack against Ilunga Makabu. So I'm looking forward to it.
You're getting paid, that's why.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm not doing it for nothing. But
Yeah,
I've been watching the pair of them the last couple of weeks, just watching their fights, like in like the whole fight, and as many of them as there are out there to watch, which isn't that many. And
Sorry about that.
I do think that the difference between the two should be the fact that Fury has been doing this an awful lot longer than Jake Paul. He should be able to make that count. Now, Paul acknowledges that and says, look, that is an advantage. I accept that, but I think my will to win will be that much greater than his, that I'll get it done. He's questioning Tommy Fury's heart. And the skill and the will, as the great man once said, the will has to be stronger than the skill and all of this. If Fury can match him for that, then the fact that he is better, the better of the two, should be the difference, I think.
Barry, how'd you see the fight playing out?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, because they're two novices we haven't seen much of. So I got no problem with the fight, actually. I got no problem with it being top of the bill. I got no problem with it being pay-per-view, because they're both famous beyond the sport. But I have no interest in the... I got interest I have in watching... And I admire... Good luck to them. They're two undefeated kids boxing each other, which at early in their careers. So that's fantastic. If we just take them... Forget about what they do. They're two boxers. One's boxers, one journeyman, though, and one hasn't boxed any boxers. But still, that's what it is. So I don't... Who knows how good they are? That's the truth of it. Talking to Andy Lee Saturday, and he said... he didn't say he was a big puncher. He said Tommy Fury's a strong puncher. Now that doesn't mean you're a knockout puncher. That just means every punch you throw is hard, but maybe lacks a bit of snap. He didn't say that, but that's my interpretation of it. So again, I don't know how that's gonna. Has Jake Paul ever taken a punch? You tend to think Fury has at some point of his life, but it has no relevance on the world scene like people are trying to make out. I won't watch it, unfortunately, because I'm not going to pay whatever the price is to go and watch two novices. I just can't. You've got to draw a line somewhere. I couldn't pay for the Fury fight versus Chisora because it was a fight that no one wanted to see. I mean, we'd seen it before. And this one, no, I can't pay for that, unfortunately. So I'm going to miss the Cruiserweight fight, which is disappointing, because that's a good fight in itself. Makabu versus Jack. So again, you've got to go with Fury. You have to go with a guy who has limited but more experience. You have to, I guess. And he looks naturally bigger. Does keep his shape quite well, and as if Andy Lee's saying he's a strong puncher, that might be enough to just keep what's his name, Jake Paul resetting. I think that's important. But if the jab's good at Fury, he might be able to keep Paul just away with the jab alone.
That's what I think should be the game plan. Get behind the jab. He did some training with Shane McGuigan and the guys in the gym 2-3 weeks before they went out for. Well, the last one
you mentioned Shane McGuigan. It's just as many times I mentioned Joe Calzaghe.
Yeah, very good. But anyway, so they said, remember, obviously it all fell out afterwards and they're not working together now. But one of the things that Shane said was that he's got good jab, he's got decent feet.
Yeah.
That should really be enough to win the fight.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Basically, you watch the pair of them. He's got nice, quick hands as well. He's got quicker hands. He's got better feet. He's been doing it for a lot longer.
But we haven't seen him take a punch.
We haven't seen him take a punch.
That. And Paul looks like he got decent power. Or they can all punch at that weight, but it looks like he got decent power. Is this light heavyweight or cruiserweight?
Cruiserweight. It's over 175.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
It'll be mid 180s. I think that's where Paul
is
is generally. He kind of comes in about 185.
So good luck to him. If they weren't famous people and we never knew them before and they were just boxing, and Jake Paul had boxed just journeymen and not like basketball players and stuff, then. That's what he's done. And no, I'm not digging him out.
No, I know. It's just mental that we're talking about the headline of a.
Then you would go, what a good little scrap this is for two undefeated kids. I boxed Neil Swain in my 6th fight and 4th fight, something like that between us, and that was a good fight.
Yeah.
But we weren't pay-per-view.
No, but you're right. You look at what do you need to make a good fight? A rivalry, great. They've got that. are they evenly matched? You could argue that they are. Is there a lot at stake? Does it matter to them? Absolutely, it does. So all of those things it's got going for it, and the fact that it's on pay-per-view and it's getting the attention that it's getting, that's just where we are in the world at the minute.
Can't blame BT for putting a pay-per-view.
No, of course not.
Again,
why wouldn't you?
like all pay-per-views, they're not marketed at us like pay-per-view. It's a fight that goes beyond the sport, and this goes beyond the sport. So they're not asking us; they just presume we're going to get it. I mean, this fight in particular, this is for other people. I feel this is for other people. This is for influencers and youngsters or whatever. It's for a different demographic, and also because it is boxing and the curiosity around it, people will. There was a chance I could have gone to work actually, not for do some podcasts and stuff out there, and like the fact that it was Saudi and stuff was a little bit of a thing for me, but I would have went. So I'm not being a hypocrite too much on it, but I would have went. But I'm not going to pay to watch it because I don't think it's for me.
No. I completely get that.
But if it was on normal BT, I would have watched it out of curiosity, and it's a fight, and I would have wanted to watch the cruiserweight world title fight. It's a world title fight. But I won't pay to watch that. But I don't blame them for doing it. And ESPN doing the same thing, because that's a marketable thing. They got going there. You can't blame them for that.
Yeah, they've had the investment into Tommy Fury since he started. I remember interviewing him before his debut. I think he made his debut on the Warrington, Frampton undercard. Was that his debut?
That sounds about right. That was
boxed around then.
Late 2018.
And this, I remember at the time, they said, I walked into the said, he's applied to go on Love Island. And then the rest is history. Obviously, he's kind of gone and done his thing. So, yeah, you can see there. I think for me, where the fight is won and lost is how Tommy Fury handles the occasion, handles the pressure. That's for me where the fight's won and lost, because we've seen him when he's boxed on Tyson's undercards, or he's boxed on Jake Paul's undercards, and he is very muscle bound and he is very tense the first couple of rounds, and he loads up, and then after 2 or 3 rounds, as you all know, Barry, you're tight and you're tense, and his shots come out and it drains you and zaps you. And I feel like that's where. Sorry, thanks.
Stop shooting yourself up.
There you go.
No, you're right. That is absolutely key. And what's different about this fight for the pair of them is that Fury so far has been in fights where he's been supposed to win, and you put pressure on himself probably to do it and look really good. And he hasn't always looked really good. This is just about winning. Yeah. And he's got to stay relaxed. I saw an interview with him last week, and it's easy to be relaxed 3 weeks out or whenever they recorded it, sitting on the apron in your own gym. But I did like what he was saying, which is basically, there's a big skill differential here, and it lies with me, and I'm going to show him that on the night. And if he takes that attitude and thinks, I've got 8 rounds to do this, this is my house, I'm much more at home in this ring than he is, how can I not be, because I've just spent a lot longer in it? If he can relax, then I think he wins. But you're right, if it does get to him and he's too gung-ho and he's too tense, then he could lose.
That big if is the big if, though. And you've got Jake Paul, for all of his lack of experience in a boxing ring, is so comfortable with all of the attention on him, so comfortable with all of the eyes being on him and all of the pressure being on him, and he's going to wind Fury up. He's going to talk about his missus, he's going to talk about his newborn kid, he's going to talk about his brother, is that all of them in fight week, just to try and get Tommy into that state where he thinks, I'm going to knock this guy out.
This fame thing of Tommy's, it's nowhere near as big as Jake Paul, but it's relatively new. And Jake Paul's had this since the Disney days, apparently. So, and he's a guy who, I don't know him, and he looked like a bit of an idiot to me, to be honest, with the stupid beard and all the rest of it. But like when he walks into a room, when I went to Taylor Serrano, he walked into and like all famous people, successful people, they have an aura around
presence,
him. Yeah. He has it.
Yeah.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, and he's used to it. He really is. And all this, like Fury should be set back going, like I'd be like this. I'm getting paid loads of money. For this, someone I wouldn't use for sparring. That's what I would think in my head.
That's what he was saying in this interview.
But also with that, it's like, what if?
You got Tyson saying if he loses, he don't come back from Saudi, and you got to change your name and stuff. Okay, whether he means it or not, it's being put out into the public domain while you're preparing for that.
It ridicules boxing if he gets beat. Jake Paul's going, I'm not the boxer. He's the boxer. I'm going to show you I am now a boxer. Which when we all slagged Jake Paul off, and we all sort of did in our own little ways and tried not to because we all want access and all. I understand that. It's true, but he's He's fighting a boxer now, though, isn't he? We can't complain.
No, we can't.
No, it's only Tommy Fury. Who is he's boxed? Well, he's a boxer, though. So,
Yeah.
look, Jake Paul, get his credit for that. He is facing a boxer in his career. And if he wins or loses, let's give him he is now a boxer.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Yeah, he's dedicated
now a boxer.
himself to it. You know, he's set up that
He is now.
Puerto Rico
But
a long
he's
time
not,
ago.
He's not.
Grinding.
He's not until this fight. This is the
Yeah.
fight that makes him a boxer, win
I
or
think
lose.
Tommy has to go in there in the first round, stick that jab on him, make him feel the jab, and just try and relax.
Yeah,
Don't
he
relax
has-
in the
he-
first round,
he-
nice
he-
and loose.
Exactly that. He has to boss the fight without being gung ho.
Yeah.
Step to the middle of the ring. So listen, now come here, you. I'm going to show you.
This
a few
is
things.
boxing.
Yeah, yeah.
What he can do, though, he can win on the jab.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
If
can.
he dances around and wins on the jab and does all this, which he could do quite easily, I think that would be the easier option for him, just to bang and move, and just win like easily. You get criticised
He will.
because you're going, no, you run, and Paul go, well, he ran, and he'd sort of be right.
If he's anything like Tyson, I mean, certainly Tyson. Well, I know it's kind of the new. There's various different versions of Tyson, but the kind of the old version of him is kind of I win however I win.
Yeah.
If he has that mentality, then I think that's what you should be doing.
All I would say is to Tommy Fury is no pressure. Just the whole reputation of boxing is all on your shoulders, mate. That's all.
But he has to go in as if this is a sparring session,
Yeah.
and this will be an easy spar because look at me and look at him.
But I don't think it will
That's
be
how
easy
he's
for
got
him.
to try and.
I think he should win, but I think Paul. I got a feeling that Paul's quite tough and will make it.
I think
drag
he is.
him in. Yeah.
I think he is.
And he's certainly bloody minded enough and
Yeah.
focused enough that he's not going to go anywhere quickly. And I think he'll, for as long as Paul's in there, he'll keep trying. But the one
Definitely.
time he's kind of been in there with somebody who's been willing to push him back, he has looked on the back foot like somebody who doesn't box. And I feel like if Tommy Fury can keep him on the end of the jab, then you're going to see that quite quickly. Right, going to wrap things up now. So before I do, going to go to Andy first. Your Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury official prediction.
I think Fury will get it right mentally. I think he will handle the occasion, and therefore he'll win.
Barry?
Points.
Yeah, I'm with Fury on points. I think he'll do what I think he shouldn't do and dance a move and win easily and get criticised for it. But I think he wins on points, yeah.
Okay, I think also Tommy Fury by decision. So that's all we've got time for. Make sure you comment below in the comment section and let us know who you think will win Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. But for me, Rob Tebbert, from Barry Jones and Andy Clark, thanks very much as always for stopping by. We'll catch up with you next time.